Hello, friends and neighbors. This is DJ's Album Share, and I'm your host, DJ Roller. My guest this week is a good friend of mine, Allie Smith. She is the founder and lead singer of a band called Blushface. And Blushface actually released a new single recently called Flannel Shirt. The track Flannel Shirt is a curiously upbeat tale of isolation, apocalypse, and hiding and finding a comfort under a unfamiliar article of clothing that the code of the universe brought for just this moment. This is starting it all over again in this ever-expanding, extra-large space we somehow find ourselves involved with. You exit, and you forget to save. And Blushface, you can find them on all social media platforms. You can follow along on Instagram at BLUSH_FACE. They have some cool stuff coming out. They're working on some new music, I think. And I really enjoyed the conversation I had with Allie. She was just a treat. She was an amazing guest. She picked a really good album for the episode today. Andy Shauf, The Party. And dude, that guy, he's something else. That is an excellent album, and I had a lot of fun listening to it and taking notes with that album. And the album I chose for the episode was Aaron Lee Tasjan. I think we messed his name up, and I'm probably still doing it. It's Tasjan, and the album is called Silver Tears. Really interesting album as well. One of my favorite talking blues songs on that album. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, go ahead and rate and review. If you're listening on YouTube, you can subscribe and leave us a comment in the comment section. Let us know you're enjoying the show. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can just follow along. And if you wanted to get in front of us and catch what songs we're listening to before the episode comes out, follow us along on Instagram. We're also doing some cool giveaways on there as well. So hope you guys go check us out. Give us a follow. Appreciate all the support. Enjoy the episode. Hey guys, before we start the show, just want to talk to you about my sponsor here for the podcast, Carolina Sea Salts. They specialize in smoked sea salts, and let me tell you guys, I got the habanero smoked sea salt the other day, and man, that shit is awesome. Do yourself a favor, go check them out at Etsy. I think their stuff is pretty reasonably priced, and yeah, man, spice up your cooking. They have a couple different flavors right now, and if you have any suggestions for them, they'll definitely open up their catalog. So don't be afraid to go out and check out those guys. They've been a really big supporter of the podcast. So I appreciate those guys. And go show them your support. Thanks. What's up, Allie? How are you?
Hi, DJ. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. This is going to be a lot of fun. And speaking of a lot of fun, I loved your album that you picked for the show by Andy Shauf, The Party.
Yeah.
And from what I read, I think it was a Rolling Stones article and a review. I think he wrote this about one party he went to, like one night. Was kind of like he distilled a bunch of songs into this album.
Isn't that great?
It's
That's
insane.
Fun. And you can tell when you're listening to, you're like, oh, I recognize that person from the last
Exactly,
one.
yeah. That's what something that I'm going to obviously hopefully bring up. I had to adjust how I take notes for albums because of this album.
Really?
I normally just listen to it, and if a song, if I feel about a song, then I'll look up the lyrics and I'll get into it. But, not every song is going to be something that you love on a lot of albums. So I never want to go into the negative side. I usually focus on the positive side. But with this, because it's like him going to a party and the whole thing of it being in one night, I really had to like read the lyrics with him. And so I could really understand, like, to me, the first three tracks are almost like his insecurities about being at the party.
Totally.
Right? Like, that was something that...
That's why I picked this album, because it's so fun and you can listen to it over and over and you can find something like, oh, this happened at the party. I missed that last time.
Right. And also, too, he definitely, part of the theme behind the show has been that we're listening to the album as a whole rather than listening to one specific track on an album, right? Like, the one thing that I really do like listening to is kind of the thought process. Through, you make music, you have put groups of songs together. It takes a lot of thought process to what song's first and what song's second, third, and fourth, right? So to even like take it a step further, and now we're writing about a specific moment in time. It was a really interesting aspect, and I'm probably going to change the way I listen to a lot of this stuff and write notes about this stuff, because it is a little bit more in depth when I've listened to this album 3 times today.
Wow.
Yeah,
nice.
where I just like, I wanted to go through it in kind of different points of my day and kind of like listen to it and listen for different stuff, like you're saying, like pick up different stuff.
Is that something you think about when you're like when you put out an album? Because I definitely think about like which song goes first and ends, and
100%.
Yeah,
And what
totally.
comes after what, and the tempo of the competing songs and stuff. Absolutely.
Because like you said, it's like kind of irrelevant now because people just click on singles. But like I still love the story it tells.
I think that musicians like Andy are proof that yes, the mainstream artists aren't doing that, but there are some definitely indie artists out there. There's in all types of genres too, because a couple of my favorite like country artists in the past year have put out albums that are similar, where they have a flow through the album and one song kind of bleeds into the next sort of thing. I think that the mainstream isn't necessarily doing that, but I wanted to kind of like go through his stuff just because like it's so interesting and really kind of break down, not really crazy in depth, but kind of touch on each song. The Magician, the first track, is I feel like it's like he's arriving to the party, but he doesn't know if he wants to be there or not type of situation.
Right.
Just the whole I think it was the second verse, the side steps to death defying feats, wait for him to reappear. Look close, you'll see him as he sweats the most each time his options disappear. So like he hasn't have options to he wants an option to be able to get out, but every time one of those options leaves, he kind of like oh I have to be here now. I have to be here now, which is it's strange for me because I'm not an introvert, right?
Oh,
like,
so you're like ready, excited to go.
I'm the one I'm the one to be at the party. Like
Right,
I feel like I'm kind of Jeremy in the later part of the album. Like I'm the dude he's talking about. He's getting a little too drunk or whatever. You know what I mean? Like so it was interesting to me because I definitely know that people go through, you know, not being an extrovert and not wanting to be there, but to hear it written, it was like and so well produced, the music and everything. I also think, if I'm not mistaken, he plays most of the instruments on this album.
Yes, he does. He wrote all the parts and plays most of the instruments.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. Which is when it's live, obviously he doesn't do that. He has a band, but that's insane, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It's a lot to pull something out of your head and then have to do all the instruments, and that just shows, I think, how good he is at his craft. And
horns and strings and everything.
Everything,
piano,
man. Yeah, he literally almost the plethora of instruments that you want to hear. And like I said, the first three tracks to me, so The Magician, Early to the Party, and Twist Your Ankle, are all kind of about like his insecurities about being at this social setting. And I wondered like what was something that really brought you to this album, I'd say, or how did you find it?
This album was actually recommended to me by Eric Godsey, who's in The Wimps. It's my bandmate Billy's in there.
Sweet.
And so he suggested it, and I was like, cool, okay. You know, when someone suggests an album, you're like, oh yeah, maybe I'll check it out. Yeah. But I listened, and I fell in love with it. And yeah, I consider myself an introvert and extrovert. It all kind of depends, but I'm never a party pooper. Like even if I'm not feeling that well, like I have to go to the party.
I feel like he kind of relates some of that message, right?
Yeah.
In the first, like he wants to be the social person.
I want to go to this party, but then I'm like, should I? Like I don't know if I should. But yeah, that definitely draws you in, and it makes you kind of feel like you're listening to this album. And you're like, I'm not sure, but like I want to like, and then it kind of grabs you in to like listen to the whole story and how it folds out.
It really truly is. It is like a great opening to like any like story, in that it, like any kind of arc. It's a great opening because it makes you want to see what happens next. You're like, oh, what are we going to talk about next? You know?
Yeah.
And kind of bleeds into the Quite Like You, where he almost steals, like to me, he almost steals his best friend's girlfriend, which is like, what?
Like
okay.
But his best friend is like being a jerk.
And it ends, and it kind of turns into like the next couple of songs too. You kind of hear this arc of like,
her name is Sherry, right?
Yeah, Sherry and Jeremy, I think, are the two characters that he's talking about, which, you know, we have no idea if they're real or not. But, you know, what's funny is that, like, his ability to take this story and kind of, it's deeper than just the party to me, right? Like, it's definitely, like, a lot of other stuff going on, but his ability to talk about some more complex subjects and reference it to a party, to me,
he talks about complex subjects, but he says it so relatably.
Yes, I think some of the other great songwriters throughout time are like that, like John Prine and some other like great songwriters. They take a complex situation and they relate it to you in a way that you're like, oh, I totally understand that.
Simple. I've been there before. This exact moment. Yeah.
And even someone who's, I'm not necessarily an introvert. There's times where like I've shown up to a party too early and like I'm waiting around like, oh yeah, this is weird, and like overdressed, and then again some of the later stuff when he's like Jeremy's drunk or whatever and he's acting a fool. It's like, yeah, I've been that guy too. So there's definitely like I don't want to spin the angle that like he's an introvert or whatever, but at the beginning, couple songs gives you that feel, and then the next 3 songs, It's Quite Like You and Begin Again and The Worst in You, are just like him like overthinking situations almost. Like the last one, The Worst in You, is like he's really overthinking. Like, is she cheating on me? Is she doing this? Whatever.
I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my picks. Well, I kind of do like a couple of songs that I pick, and the albums like this is hard to like pick something out that you like more than anything else. With it being like a lineal, you know what I mean? He's almost like a journalist in this aspect where he's like pointing stuff out, so it's kind of hard to like pick one track out, because without the context of the tracks before, it's kind of hard to understand. But it's a ride. It's been something that like listening to this album has been something that's like kind of opened my eyes to like even like the next level. Like I feel like there's levels to everything you do, and he's like
songwriting.
Yes,
yeah,
yes. For me, I'm not the songwriter. I'm the musician. I'm the one who sits around and like learns whatever stringed instrument. I've never thought a lot of into poetry, and I mean lyrics. In the last couple of years, yeah, I've definitely tried. I've definitely made an attempt to write songs, but I don't have a lot of confidence in them because I don't feel like words and right. That's not my strong suit. So I stick to the stringed instruments. And definitely like when you hear someone who's exceptionally good at something like that, it makes you go, oh, there's another level, and this guy's on that level, and it makes you kind of just realize like what's available out there.
Exactly. That's what inspired me so much about it. Just made me be like, I can do so much more with like how I choose words in a song or like stories that go together in an album.
And I think that what I was reading is that he wrote almost 100 songs or something, and he distilled them down into whatever.
I didn't know that. I'd love to hear those other songs.
Yeah, right? Like, I from what I've read, he's a very prolific. I can't even say the word. He writes quite a few songs.
Prolific.
Thank you. Jeez. He's a very prolific songwriter, and like it's like to then like. So I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum, right, where I don't write that many songs, and I could barely string together 10 songs and put them in an album, much less have a concept album like this, right?
Well, you don't write songs, but if I ask you, like, hey, DJ, what are the chords to this song? You'd be like, oh, it's this and this and this and this, and 100%. You just play it for me, and I'm like, okay, well, you figured that out fast.
Well, the thing that I was going to say is, like, when you hear somebody write, how does he choose between those 100? Like, it was, that must be a very painstaking, like, hard process to distill it down to these tracks, right? Like,
I have no idea. I've never written 100 songs in my life.
That's what I was getting at. It's like, I'm on the way far into the spectrum. But for somebody who writes music, it must still be mind-blowing that, like, for him to write so many songs and then distill them down to this and to make them flow as well, right? Like what we were talking about, like what song comes after it. When you have so many options available, that probably gets really hard.
Yeah.
But back to some of the tracks, To You was a strange turn to me because I feel like the whole thing was going on between the couple, right? So Sherry and Jeremy, the whole fight was going on, and then he feels like he's stealing her away, and then he's like overthinking what's going on.
How does To You start? Wait, remind me. I forget titles of songs sometimes.
I'd have to play it. Hang on one second. Let's pause this. And we're back. To You.
All right, To You. Got it.
That song really. It threw me for a loop because before that you had the whole fight between the couple, and like maybe he tried to steal the girl away, and then he's overthinking what's going on, and then he has this moment where he just like pulls Jeremy aside and tells him he loves him, basically. You know what I mean? That was the moment to me where I was like, oh, and at first he makes a reference in the second part of the song where it's like, oh, it's not what you think, whatever. Like I didn't mean it like that, but really to me, listening to it, he realizes that something weird has happened inside. He comes outside with Jeremy and he's like, hey man, we're still friends. You know what I mean? Maybe he said it in the wrong way, but he's like, I mean, he references it in the Quite Like You, where he's like, Jeremy's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that it threw me for a loop though, for him to go that route. It was just a strange turn. Okay. I don't mean strange in a bad way.
Maybe it makes you think that it could be one party, but it could also be just like a series of events that happens at multiple parties. And
Right.
like in the scheme of it
Exactly.
all of life, it is just one big party.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that too.
Oh, that exactly. And that was something that I couldn't get over listening to a couple of the tracks. It was like, I know that the review and whatever I read said that, and like I know that that's kind of the thing. But to me, there's a lot of other underlying things that happen in everyday life, and like especially like the thing that happened between the couple and just the way he overthinks with the stuff. To me, like the way he writes about overthinking, I was like, oh man, I do that every day with everything. You know, that's like
he's basically just writing his subconscious like stream of consciousness. Is what and it's just like everyone thinks that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But to you basically telling it was basically a love song to his best friend. It was like a love song to his best friend, and I was like, oh my god.
His best friend's just like, dude, you're being weird.
Yeah,
right.
But I felt that where it was like, oh my god, like he's not trying to be weird. He's just trying to tell you like he loves you as your friend. Like I don't know. I went through a little bit of emotional thing when I was like reading the words and listening to it, and I was like, oh wait, like I went about this completely wrong, because at first I thought it was like a ballad to it, like he's talking about he kind of was in love with her, and then all of a sudden he's telling him he loves him. I'm like, oh wait, and he kind of addresses that too in the song too. I was like, wait, are you in love with both of them, or like what's the thing, you know? But then I kind of like got it clicked. I was like, no, he's just trying to tell his friend like, hey man, like there's some weird shit's going on.
Be
but
masculine and just love each other sometimes.
I know, right, dude? I tell my bro friends I love them all the time. They don't listen. But going forward, it's a couple more tracks. From there, it seems almost to me that it kind of spirals into the real world stuff. They kind of like almost like there's no end to the party. Mm-hmm. Like the next couple of tracks.
Yeah, you're right. There's no end.
It just spirals into like what reality is at that point, and I think that ties into like what you were saying is like the life is the party.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like it's a lot more than just this one specific incident. That may be how it started in a couple of tracks at the beginning, where what he noticed at the party.
Sure, yeah.
But kind of like to me, the next couple of tracks kind of spawn into like the crazy shit in the world with Eyes of the Mall. That's just the new thing that captures his attention to kind of like, we've all gone through some stuff where bad stuff happening, and then that new thing comes around and you're like, oh, well, the bad shit's still going on, but for the time being, I'm entertained, or I'm attracted, or whatever it is to this thing going on, and it just happened to be another girl, or how he expressed it was another girl,
And now that you said that, I've never thought this before, but like you said, it goes into kind of more real world stuff, but it's also kind of like, it started out he was nervous to go to this party, but now that he's kind of drunk and like maybe a little high, like he's like, his brain is just somewhere else.
Yeah,
like, it's no longer at the party. This is like exterior party.
Right. Yeah, and so it kind of ties into like the next couple of tracks. And what's so crazy is Alexander All Alone. When I started that track, I loved it. But by the end, when you realize the dude's dead, and like it's like he's not even dead, but he doesn't even like his spirit doesn't pass on. You're like, I don't like this song anymore. But I loved it when it was like the first couple of bars are about like him lighting up a cigarette. It's the last one he'll ever smoke or something like that. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my god, I know that feeling. I think I've had a problem with cigarettes forever.
I used to be there too.
And it's a lot of things that the realism that he uses as metaphors, are amazing. It's amazing. Like you said before, it's like when you see someone do something great, or you hear someone do something great, it kind of lets you know what your options are. Then you're like, oh man, now I can do that too, or I can try to do a version of that, or it's not until you see someone do something sometimes that you realize it's available to you to do as well. I don't think I'm talented enough to write an album like this, but that I can attempt. I could.
Well, now you have new ideas,
right? It already sparks new ideas, and it already creates new things for me personally. Where I'm like, oh man, I had one of these podcasts with a previous guest, Andrew Pauly, and he said before, there's multiple different types of songwriters, right?
Oh, sure.
You could be journalistic. You could write about just political stuff. You could write about a lot of different stuff, different types of songwriters. And I feel like the two albums we picked are two different types of songwriters. He said, but like that doesn't mean that like once you figure out what you are, you don't like need to double down on it. So maybe I've been writing songs like it's not. Why shouldn't I try? You know what I mean? That's the thought process I'm going through. Where it's like, listening to this, literally almost journalistic songwriter. go through this moment he had, and then like you said, like we've been talking about, kind of turn it into the realism of what he's going through in his life.
But it's like everyday things too. But,
right.
But it's still so interesting.
Right. It's a very interesting album, and I don't know that the genre of music, like that genre of music, I haven't been like really deep into in my lifetime.
What would you call it?
I'd say probably like indie rock. Would you say like indie
rock? It is. I feel like it's very poppy too, but
yeah,
not in
poppy.
like a mainstream sense. Like it's jingly, like Paul Simon-y kind of.
The organ stuff, I'd say, definitely. It definitely gives me those vibes. But I in that time period, like the middle 2000s songwriters in that genre, I'm not very well versed in. So that was awesome. So I'm listening to this album. This is some of my first like responses to it. This is what's so cool about what I'm wanting to do here is because unless I had this conversation with you and asked you, come on, I'd have never listened to this album. I'd have never like delved into this album that way.
That's why,
And so I think that we can all learn something from everyone else, like at all times. And so you take, I'm learning like jazz right now on the mandolin. And so like you take and yeah, that's such a weird fucking thing to say, but you take something like this where it's like, a genre that I'm not even like focused on at the moment. And then all of a sudden I listen to this album, I really focus on this album, I take notes on this album, and now I'm like, feel like I'm learning something from it. It's like, man.
That's exactly why you do this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I it's why, and it's also like it's a lot more fun than I'm learning to enjoy it as well. Like I'm learning to take something from all these albums that I'm listening to, not in a sense that I'm stealing from them, but in a sense that I'm being influenced by them. Because what influences you, that's kind of the question I pose before. What album influenced you, and then I give it to you, and I can kind of like sit in your shoes or sit in my guest's shoes for a second and listen to this album and go, okay, cool. And then, like I said, I had to listen to this like several times before I like sat down and like, okay, I really need to understand the words before I can say that I understand this album.
And also, not to mention, it's kind of hard to understand him sometimes.
Well, that's the reverb, the
it's
like
a reverb, but he
voice.
also has like a weird like pronunciation. Well, he's Canadian, but it's not a Canadian accent.
I forgot to say that. Yeah, he is Canadian.
But it's not a Canadian accent. It's like a weird like. I don't know. It's like a weird little like
way he pronounce.
Yeah,
it is a flow, a cadence almost.
Yes,
a strange cadence that he uses on his stuff. And before we get into the next album, I guess we should hit the last two. Okay. The last one. Sorry, the Maureen Sways. Is that it? I think
Martha Sways.
Martha Sways. God, I can't read my writing. Martha Sways.
Oh my gosh, that song.
And that to me was the realization that kind of that, and this isn't a thought I had during my note taking, but kind of I'm having right now. It's like, yeah, the party doesn't end, and you kind of just have to, your expectations for stuff don't necessarily always get met. You know what I mean? Because he's talking about you're not the one I want to be with, but
yeah, Martha Sways, pretty just like you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hold her hand the way I held yours or something like that. It's like, it's not You're not Martha, but
and talking about looking into her eyes and wanting to die, kind of, because like he can tell
it's such a beautiful song though. It's
so beautiful because I feel like with these introspective writers, like they can definitely tell emotion very well, and so like definitely convey emotion very well, and the way he conveys, like he can see it in her eyes that she cares about him, and that makes him feel sad. And that was something I was like, man, dude, that's a heavy thing to write about, and to write about it in 4 lines and to kind of convey that message in 4 lines was very impressive.
Dance to the radio, that part.
Yeah,
that's good.
And it's just like, dude, these songwriters like this, it makes you think like, dude, maybe don't go to parties. I'm just kidding. I want to make that joke.
Oh man, I wish there were parties.
I know, right? Seriously, I wish there were music gigs too.
I'll be the same as Andy Shauf in the first 3 songs, going to the party when there's another party happening.
Yeah.
Once again, everyone has their vaccine or whatever.
Yes.
I'm gonna be like, I don't know how to talk to people.
Exactly.
Oh my
God, tell me about it. This is also part of this. I'm trying to practice talk to people again.
Yeah, same.
I mean, before I pivot, there is something to the thought process of us talking about an album called The Party during the pandemic.
Yeah,
that's so wild.
We're not going to any parties.
We're not going to any parties anytime soon. And honestly, Andy probably shouldn't either. Just kidding. Before we transition, I do wanted to definitely say thank you and definitely appreciate you giving me that music because I learned. I definitely grew from listening to that album, so I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. I didn't know which one to pick. There's
Nobody
so many
does.
albums, but I was like, this one had an effect on me 4 years ago.
That's kind of what I wanted.
I'm just gonna send it to DJ,
and that's why I wanted to ask you: is there any of the tracks that really stood out to you that were? I know we talked about this album being a kind of concept album and being in a whole, but was there anything that like jumped out at you that you just love the most?
Quite Like You, we talked about, because it is a little odd. He appreciates his best friend's girlfriend because she's underappreciated by his best friend. And he feels like she deserves more love than that. But then at the end of the song, it's like Martha puts her arm around her boyfriend, she's like sad, like he's a total jerk, but like she's still with him, and Andy's just like watching this from afar. I don't know, I felt like that was so relatable. I also really love Martha Sways. I just think it's a beautiful song, and the storytelling and the lyrics are obviously amazing, but the instrumentation too, everything is insane. So melodic but simple and like doo 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 doo.
It shows you that you don't have to know how to play jazz to be complex, right? Like you don't have to know.
You could just
composition of this stuff doesn't have to be the
composition and layers of like little jingles and like little doo.
I definitely appreciated that. And you have like you said before, you have like strings in the background at one point, and you have like violins and cellos, and like it's amazing. I can barely like write a song and think of like how the chord progression should go with just the instrument I'm writing it with, much less think, oh yeah, I'm gonna have bass, drums, this. Thinking in layers. Thinking in layers is tough. So I can't relate to that in that aspect where it was like, man, that is super impressive. But on to the next one.
I'm really glad you liked it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So the next artist is Aaron Lee. What is it? Tasjan? Is that?
I think it's Tasjan.
Tasjan. Tasjan.
It's not like a j, it's like a Tasjan.
Tasjan.
He said like Tasjan or something. Tasjan.
Anyways, Tasjan. And he actually commented on the Instagram page, so good for that guy. He's pretty cool, dude. I actually got introduced to Aaron by the National. It was a show at the National, and this will tell you how much of an impression he made on me. I don't remember the headline. I remember him, but I don't remember who headlined that show.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, he made a super big impression on me.
Nice. I've went to shows like that. I remember the opener. Yeah.
Where you pay the ticket to go see the main act, and then the opening act is so. I won't say they're just different enough to where it catches your attention. I think that we kind of get lulled into like sleep sometimes when you're hearing something that you know what I mean. And so when you see that opening bang that's really good, and you're like, I've never heard this song, but this is awesome.
Yeah.
That's a moment that kind of sticks with you almost more than the main act does. So that was something I wanted to bring up about this guy. He caught me off guard on the show that I saw him. Because
where did you see him?
At the National.
Here
in Richmond.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it was like, I was up front. I was really close to him. I was like, the National, you can get basically a damn near right on top of the dude. So it was like.
And who was the main?
That's what I'm saying. I can't remember.
Oh, you can't remember.
I can't remember who the main act is. He made an impression on my brain, but the main act that I paid money for didn't. Okay. So that was pretty funny. And with this one, I'm not gonna necessarily like go through all the tracks the way we did the other one. It's not a concept album in that way. I do like several of the tracks off the album. I want to start with.
I took some notes too.
Sure, yeah, definitely. The one of the first songs that kind of caught me, because like I said, normally how I listen to this stuff is I'll listen to the album, and anything that jumps out at me personally, I'll take notes and I'll write in depth about. And I have kind of the first songs, but really the first song that jumped off was a Memphis Rain, because it's seriously just like every verse is tagged with. In the Memphis Rain, which is crazy because it doesn't seem like a well written, or it doesn't seem like a complex song or anything like that. But to me, it was very catchy and very very deep.
That
song,
one was. It was very catchy. Yeah.
And I think that one of my favorite parts of it is that he holds please for like 4 bars. Please, he steps it up. It's please, silver lining, my old friend, come back around again. In the Memphis Rain, and like it was, those little tricks and those little things like that. So this guy, backstory, he is a Nashville songwriter.
I was gonna ask you, I think I knew that he lived in Nashville, at some point? Is he from there? Or?
Not originally. So
Okay.
I think he's originally, from what I read, from Ohio.
Okay.
And then he bounced around. He opened for a couple of dudes, as we all do. And he ended up relocating in Nashville. And you can kind of hear on this album more of his, and this album and the previous album before it, because those were the two that he released under a label or under an actual, because he has some music out otherwise, but I don't think it's like stuff, any like type of albums out, you know? The first two albums, you can definitely hear the country. You can definitely hear the steel guitar in the background on a couple of tracks.
Okay, so more of a country vibe in the
more
older
of a country
albums.
vibe. But then his later albums, which I think he has an album coming out tomorrow, which the episode means it's today if you're listening right now. But he has a new album coming out, and his previous album, it's gone very much different. He's evolved quite a bit, and so I don't want people to listen to this album just think he's like a Nashville country songwriter, because he's not.
Oh wait, did you say the name of the album?
It's
we were talking
Silver
about?
Tears.
Silver Tears.
Yeah,
Okay.
Silver
so
Tears.
this one was from 2016.
2016,
right? And he has one from 2020.
Yes,
And
he's
coming out with
releasing one right tomorrow on Friday.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, today. and it's really cool because you have some great songwriters like Andy, like we talked about for a little bit, that you can hear. I'll take that back. With all songwriters, I'll say you definitely hear them evolve over time, right? And you hear them do different stuff. And with Aaron, he definitely has the country vibes on some of this stuff, but some of this stuff he doesn't. He has a bluesier side. He's got.
I was gonna say that listening to this album, each song that came on, I was like, "Oh, this is bluesy. Oh, this is like kind of grungy. Like, oh, this is."
He's got his other sides to him. It
like
seems that
Fleet Foxy, indie folk. Kind of.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, he definitely has his other sides to him. I feel that probably being in the Nashville scene, you get pushed to do certain things.
Oh
right?
yeah,
I'm
sure.
Have a steel guitar and stuff. And of course, like I have this angst in me. So the angst in me just love the Ready to Die song. The
do you want to hear my one note I have for Ready to Die?
Yeah.
It's DJ could cover this well.
Oh yes.
So as soon as I heard that song, I was like, oh, this is a DJ song.
Yes, it is. And this is why I shared this album with you, because this is very much, I was listening to Andy and I was listening to the stuff and I was like, man, I don't know anything to relate to this guy other than the Aaron. Like the only person I could bring up that was, and these guys are not, I don't think that similar in songwriting style, right? But I think that as far as like metaphorically and how they write, I think they're close. But yeah, this is the closest thing I come. But I know this album very well, so yeah, definitely I could see you thinking that.
I thought actually listening to what is it, Dime? Mm-hmm. Dime kind of gave me, I think, Andy Shauf vibes.
Okay.
Similar. I think it was because of the tempo and cadence and like the harmonies, especially like the harmonies were kind of like slow and lifting and lowering.
Yeah.
I don't know. It gave me I don't know. That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, that's the beautiful part about music is that like we can listen to stuff and then go, hey, I get this vibe and that vibe. And that's part of the show too, is that, listening. I want the listener, whoever's listening to us talk about this, to be able to listen to both of those albums back to back and kind of understand the things that we're talking about and understand the similarities behind it. So that's really cool that you thought that, because Dime to me was one of the tracks where I listened to and I was like, it's well written. But I was like, man, it's so. I feel like it's the tempo almost. I loved it, but it was like, I can't explain this. I'm gonna move on. It happens sometimes.
Yeah. Take another listen and see.
I'm gonna definitely do. Hey, that's part of it.
Yeah.
And the next song that really caught my attention was "On Your Side," and I'll tell you why. The first line of the song. I sing jokes and call them songs. And I think that really, really ties into Aaron as a songwriter. A lot of his stuff is like trying to make you giggle or trying to make you think or something in that aspect. And I really like that. I've always loved cute little songs almost, or something that makes you kind of giggle or something like that. And that was the line that I caught immediately in that song. And I was like, wow, dude.
I noticed he does that often. And I think he's a songwriter kind of in that sense, because he will mention the song he's currently singing in the song.
Yeah.
Or he will talk about like how he was writing the song, and it kind of like it breaks the wall.
Fourth wall, yeah.
It breaks the wall, and it's like, oh yeah, this is a regular person who is a songwriter, who is a musician, and
you got to think like to be in the songwriting scene like Nashville or whatever, like that's a pretty competitive scene.
Jeez.
So you've got to have your own authentic identity and be doing your own thing. I'm assuming that's his route, and I like it. Me personally, I'm a fan. I have been a fan of this guy for a couple of years now. I can't remember when I saw him live, but I've been a fan ever since I saw him live, and I've kept up with his stuff. I know he's got one album that came out before this one. I think you said it was like this past year. And it's very Beatlesy to me. Like,
okay, I need to take a listen.
You
to
need
that
to check
one
that
too.
one out. Yeah, that one would be really cool. You might like that one a little bit better. The next song is probably the reason I know this guy.
Okay,
it's the 12 Bar Blues.
okay.
That is
I have that on my list to talk about.
That's my favorite song, and I really think that I saw him play that live, and I was like, man, this guy is fucking awesome.
Did he improv anything of it, or was it? Do you think it was the same?
No, it was the same.
Okay,
it was.
cool.
I've seen him do it on YouTube videos where he did it at like Paste, the thing in New York where they do it like in front of a bookshelf. It's like a YouTube video. It's pretty famous. They've had a couple different guys on there. He does it very similar. He doesn't change it up very much.
It's a good old talking blues.
I love that shit, man. And he introduced me to whoever Philip Levine is, man. Like,
I know that I wrote that down too. Okay, Philip Levine. I looked him up. He's a great poet.
Yeah, and he passed away right before this album came out, which is why I think that he, may have referenced him in this. I'm not, I can't get in his mind, but in my head, if a poet that I was a fan of had passed away right before I released the album, and I was going to mention his name, it would kind of be an homage to him, right? And so, yeah, I think he passed away in 2015. Okay. And so, yeah, that was one of my favorite lines in that was, if more people wrote stuff down, they'd know who Philip Levine is.
As like Aaron, as a songwriter, he does that a lot. He will throw in references to all these things. So I noticed he mentions 4 different types of vehicles in this album. He mentions a Mercedes, an H2 Hummer, a CBS 750 motorcycle, and a Cadillac.
Yeah.
And it's like he just loves not name dropping, but referencing things.
Referencing real stuff.
Which
realism.
Blushface's last album, full album, I reference Carey Street, Main Street. I'd say a Honda Accord or something. I just love real things in life, just slapping them down.
I love that. I love that you got that from that, because I didn't. That's the whole beauty of us, of another musically talented person. Your perspective, what you pick up, I'm ignorant to until you tell me. And now I'm gonna go back and listen to that album and look for the car references and think about it.
What do you think about the Hootie and the Blowfish part? That was funny.
I loved it. To be honest with you, I loved it, dude. Because because you got to think in 2016, that's the time where Darius Rucker had just done the old Crow Medicine Show song. So that's around the same time period. So for him to this is him referencing current events in that song. It's not that we don't like Hootie, man. All that stuff. Yeah. To me,
but there's no one named Hootie right now.
I know, right? It's a way for him to name drop somebody without name dropping somebody.
But also, he's making the joke, like he said. He's a jokester, song.
Yeah, and I think too, a lot of people who are in Nashville or who play country and bluegrass music over the last 10 years have been asked to play Wagon Wheel, and to me personally, that is a dig at Wagon Wheel, because he's saying a guy came up and he's tried to sing karaoke Hootie and the Blowfish, which if we all know, people who sing karaoke don't necessarily know who does songs. So it's that's a joke on a joke right there. He's saying the guy's doing karaoke of Hootie and the Blowfish. He's doing karaoke of Darius Rucker, which is to me a layer on a layer, which I love. God, I love the way he does that joke. That's why I wanted to reference I sing jokes and call them songs, because he really is. The first time I heard that song, I cracked up, and it made me go back and re-listen to it. But yeah, the Hootie and the Blowfish line is pretty fucking hilarious.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you know the first Talking Blues? I found this while Googling it today. First Talking Blues song was in 1926.
Oh, really?
A guy started it. Yeah, he kind of started it. His name is Christopher Allen Bachelon. I'm definitely butchering that last name.
It's okay, we can search it.
But he's from Atlanta. In 1926, he did the first kind of
Do you know the name of the track?
Song.
I'm going to look it up.
Oh, it's called Talking Blues.
Oh, it's called Talking Blues.
It's called Talking Blues,
awesome.
which is where it comes from.
Everybody's got homework to do now. Yeah, no, and I just plugged a song that's on YouTube right now that I just recorded with. We did this Richmond Talking Blues. It's a guy who's been on the show. His name's Andrew Pauly, and he does a song called Richmond Talking Blues, and he's references the Nickel Bridge, and my favorite line of the song is the nickel bridge costs 35 cents. That's 7 nickels. Why don't you call it 7 nickel bridge and quit lying to people? And it's like that sort of stuff, those jokey lines and stuff like that have always been so interesting and entertaining, because that's what we are at the end of the day, right? Entertainers. I know a lot of songwriters and artists get in their head and get in their own head about wanting to be perfect and all that other stuff, but it's like, at the end of the day, we should be entertaining people, or entertaining ourselves, or entertaining someone. Like, if you're entertaining yourself, I'm cool with that too. You don't have to make anybody else happy. I feel like that's part of what I'm doing here, is I'm just doing this for myself. I'm just making myself happy. So like, you don't have to do that for anybody. If you're doing it for yourself, that's great. But knowing your role almost kind of helps too. I love the talking blues stuff though, because you're mixing genres at that point. You've got a little bit of blues, you got a little bit of country, you got a little bit of jazz. He does some like seventh walk-ups. He does some really cool finger picking stuff on it. But him talking about referencing the 12-bar blues, it's just so many jokes in that song. Like 12-bar blues is all about like timing structure. Like if you're really thinking of it from a music perspective. And then he's talking about visiting 12 bars.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't.
You didn't get that?
I went on a walk today and I listened to it twice.
Yeah.
I didn't actually get that, but that
like a timing structure, like just playing like a 12-bar blues, like a normal 12 bars of a song. Yeah. So that was something I love, how he puts jokes on jokes, like stuff like that is something to me.
I was just thinking about the bars I can't go to anymore.
I work at a bar. Don't talk about it. Well, what's something that I'm gonna kind of jump over the last song, because the way the road begins and ends is a beautiful song, but it's a very complex and deep song and heavy song to end the album with, and I like to end it with a little bit lighter ending there. But what's something that really jumped out for you on this album?
Okay, I've kind of been. Let me go back to my notes. All right, the opener, "Hard Life." It gave me kind of Caribbean lime in the coconut type of. Don't you think so?
Yeah, I can now. Like it's the tempo, right? The tempo behind it.
It's the tempo. It's it's everything. Which I thought it was a great album opener, and I think it's cool to kind of open an album like on that note and then end it with a deep song, like
interesting.
How he ended it, just like kind of Andy Shauf did too. Because it leaves you like making you think and being like deep and introspective in yourself,
and like, almost wanting more.
Like,
as
wow,
well.
I could start that album over again, and like
exactly,
it's just
almost wanting more and almost wanting to listen to more of their art.
My favorite song was actually "Little Movies."
Yeah, that's a great song. I have some stuff written down for that too.
Yeah, I like that song a lot. It reminded me of kind of like a more indie folk vibe, which is more my type of music that I write and listen to. It seemed like its title, like Little Movies, it seemed like the pivotal point of like an indie film movie when like someone's about to figure something out.
I mean, the chorus is but you don't know I've seen the ending, still I can't look away, don't you know all of this pretending is just a little movie that we play. I thought that was beautifully written.
I like that a lot, and I like that song a lot, and I like how he sings 2 lines that's just completely solo, kind of takes you out of the song for a second and then it goes right back in. I like that song a lot. Yeah And I did want to point out in "Hard Life" too, redneck bummer in a H2 Hummer. And he sure does hate the queers.
I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, I love that line.
Yeah, it was sometimes I don't want to be the one to bring up everything too, you know what I mean? So I didn't want to that line is fucking it's great,
that
right?
Line is great. Yeah. And my other favorite song of the album was one that you didn't mention yet. It's "Till the Town Goes Dark."
Okay.
It gave me like kind of a grunge vibe. I thought it was really fun to listen to. Yeah.
Dope, man. Well, I think that for me, it's all about like experiencing these albums, listening to these albums, because someone, like you said, when we started, someone put you onto them, right? And so for me, like learning this stuff, listening to stuff, learning it has helped me kind of develop a little bit more every time. Every time I listen to someone else's suggestion, and honestly, I've been doing it forever, right? Like I think even the first time we ever met, I was like, "Hey, have you heard this?" And you just say, "Have you heard this artist? Have you heard this song? Have you?" And we played music for each other, and I think that that's something that musicians need each other. Whether it be songwriters or musicians in general, we all need each other. We need to have this interaction between each other to be like to influence each other. And I don't. ever want to get to a place where we stop doing that. And
it's a sad time right now because we don't have each other. We're
don't.
not bumping into each other at shows, and we're not like,
I know. And that's part of, I'm not doing very much here, but that's part of what I want to do here.
Yeah, I
want to have people on that I love, and I really have always vibed with you. We've always gotten down on the musical level, and that was why I wanted to have you on. And I wanted to ask you right now, and put you on the spot, will you come back on again in the future?
I totally will. I have so many more albums. This has been so much fun.
Perfect.
And just the fact that we shared most of the same notes too. It's
I
thought of that too.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I find that happens a lot. I find that, not that I ever invite people on that have the same thoughts as me. I actually invite people on that are quite different in genre usually.
Yeah.
But normally, we all what's good is good. Like it once it passes that test of good, all of us can appreciate it. Especially myself. Like I've gotten into a much more open mind state with music, doing this, and even before that, to where I'm just a sponge at this point.
Sure,
I just want to learn. The more I can play with other people and get influenced with other people, this is making me actually sit down. So for years, I've had other musicians give me references on albums and other things, and I didn't have the time or the dedication to sit down and listen to them.
But this has given you a reason to do exactly that.
Exactly.
That's
so
cool. And which I really liked having like kind of homework today.
Right? Isn't that fun?
I was like, I'm going to go on a walk because my favorite way to listen to music is while walking.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm going to go on a walk and listen to this album twice through. And
yeah,
it was awesome. It was so great.
It's fun because right now, like without us having this outlet that we normally know, this is a way that we can do that. And we can all kind of like it. I think that's what's funny is when the quarantine and everything happened, people started streaming music more, people started watching movies more and everything, and we rely on the arts quite a bit. And so this is my small contribution to appreciate other musicians instead of just being wrapped up in my own ego, which is what most musicians are wrapped up in. And I understand it, dude. I completely understand it. I am guilty of it very much. This is my small way of not being wrapped up in my own ego and talking about other musicians and learning and being influenced. And that's kind of, I never started playing music just because I wanted to do it. I was influenced by other people to play music, other people to play music. So this is just my small way to do that too. So I appreciate you coming on. We're pretty good on time. So was there anything else you want to talk about before we get off here?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. This has been super fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Allie.